Welcome to our podcast tonight. Tonight we are looking at the issue of how the courts have been misled by the North American Mission Board in multiple filings now at the Northern District Court of Mississippi, at the U.S. Fifth Circuit Court, and at the Supreme Court of the United States. And now there's an appeal going back to the Supreme Court, and the court will consider whether they're going to take the case on appeal or not, or if the ruling at the U.S. Fifth Circuit Court will stand at this point. Joining me tonight to discuss this is someone that some of you may already know. He's been on the channel many times before. Dr. Randy Adams is going to join us. Dr. Adams is the fairly recently retired executive director for the Northwest Baptist Convention of the Southern Baptists. And he also has been on the state convention staff in Oklahoma, has been a church planter, has been a pastor, all these serving Southern Baptists exclusively for many, many years. So we're glad to have him joining us tonight to help us to better understand exactly what's going on with some of these court filings. Randy, thanks for joining us tonight.
You're welcome, Bobby. Good to be here.
Well, let's get started. There are multiple things that have been put into the court record, which has been of great concern. You and I were talking about this the other night and decided for us to share this with other Southern Baptists that may be interested, because there are a number of statements that have been made to the courts at these different court submissions. There have been thousands and thousands of pages submitted, but the phraseology and the language that's being used by the North American Mission Board is of great concern to Southern Baptist polity, especially the issue of autonomy. One of those issues that I want you to address first off is that NAMB said that they had the legal right to interfere to protect their own economic or other interests. And this is of great concern that any church that has partnered with the North American Mission Board in any way, shape, or form for a church plant or for a conference or any other way that the North American Mission Board could actually say that we are a part of that. And this is part of kind of a blanket perception that it seems they are trying to create, that we're all just one big church. Thus, religious liberty should not be impeded. And they've claimed the ecclesiastical abstention doctrine, that the court should not say anything. And as of this point, since this case has been in the court system, the actual facts of the case have not been heard yet, but this particular thing is of great concern. Randy, start with this issue of the legal concerns that we might have with the North American Mission Board saying this.
Sure. Well, it concerns a lawsuit that was filed about 9 years ago by Will McRaney, in which Will was the former executive director of the Maryland-Delaware Convention, former seminary professor at New Orleans, a lot of ministry background, church planter as well. And he alleges that he was defamed and that he was interfered with by the North American Mission Board. Now, interestingly, those filings that began 9 years ago or so, they've never been adjudicated in court. So McRaney's allegations are not something that the court has ever ruled upon or even considered. What's been considered all these years is whether or not a person has a right to even claim that NAMB has interfered with their job or defamed their character. And so that's what this whole thing's about. NAMB has said that they are protected by the First Amendment and that they could, if they chose, interfere with someone who works with them in some fashion, doesn't work for them, but just is a Southern Baptist who participates in some way with the ministry of the North American Mission Board, that they have a right to interfere and a right to defame the character of that person. Now, they say they have not done that in McRaney's case, but they say that the First Amendment protects them and that they could do that. And so the issue is not what happened to McRaney, Whether his arguments are good or not is not the question at this point. The question is, if NAMB can do what it chooses regarding McRaney, can NAMB therefore do what it chooses, or not just NAMB, maybe others, with you? And in the courts, the argument has been made essentially that we're all part of one big Baptist church. And that as a part of one big Baptist church, it's an inter-church argument when you say that the president of the North American Mission Board or an employee of the North American Mission Board, if they defame you or try to get you fired from your job, that you have no legal recourse, even though you don't work for them, even though you're not a part of their organization, but because you're a Baptist and we're all part of this one big Baptist church, essentially, like if we were Roman Catholics and we're all part of the Roman Catholic Church with the hierarchical system that they have. They're sort of saying that Baptists are similar. We're all part of one big church, and therefore we can say anything we want about one another, and we can try to get each other fired or try to prevent someone from being hired by spreading information about them that could be wrong, that we could do that and we would have no legal recourse because the First Amendment would protect us. So that's essentially the issue. It's not just about McRaney. It's about every, the 100,000 plus Baptist ministers out there, the 45,000 Baptist churches out there. It's about all of us, really.
Well, and the great concern, obviously, is, as you have already stated, is that this can impact anybody who has anything to do with the North American Mission Board. There are things, again, have not been adjudicated, but there have been depositions taken, extensive depositions taken of multiple people with the North American Mission Board, of McRaney, of his wife, Sandy, and of multiple other people that have stood on one side or the other in this case. And the North American Mission Board, the language that they're using is inferring just what you've said, like the Baptist Church. Actually, they have referred to the Southern Baptist Church. There is no such thing as the Southern Baptist Church. There are churches who are affiliated with Southern Baptist, and there is no hierarchy, although the ERLC, with the knowledge and encouragement of the North American Mission Board, submitted an amicus brief to the U.S. Fifth Circuit Court the first time around there in the McRaney-NAMB case, in which they argued that. Tell us a little bit about that argument, what they put into the court record at that time. Just briefly, we don't need to go through the whole thing, but put that in place for us.
Yeah, and it's still a part of the court record that the ERLC, with NAMB's understanding and knowledge, said that Southern Baptists are a hierarchy, that at the top of the hierarchy is the Southern Baptist Convention, and that all other conventions, churches, associations fall under the Southern Baptist Convention. The court, or what the ERLC argued, what the amicus on behalf of NAMB argued, is that we're sort of like Roman Catholics. We have a hierarchical system, and we're all part of that same system. And therefore, the First Amendment would protect every part of that system from any interference or any decision by a court. So every pastor, every minister, every church, every convention, every association is part of the system. And that essentially we would all have to answer to the authorities above us in the system, and we would have no recourse if they mistreated us in some way.
Yeah, that's quite an accusation to have been made without any doubt, and puts basically every church, every state convention, every association in potential jeopardy at that point. Let's take just a quick, go ahead.
Say one thing about that. When that happened, there was a firestorm. There was an outcry by some Baptist leaders. The problem is the outcry wasn't in the courts. And the decision of the courts is what sets precedent in terms of how we operate. And we can say whatever we want from a pulpit or in a newspaper, but it's what's said in the court and what's submitted to the court. And that, in fact, is what was submitted to the court, and it's not been withdrawn.
Yeah, and that's a real concern. Again, the key word you've used, and quick disclaimer: you and I, neither one are lawyers, but we've been around this for a long time, and the key word is precedent. These are
Yeah.
legal precedents that are being set, and the statements and the phrases and the phraseology that's being put into the court record by the North American Mission Board is part of what is concerning. Randy, let's take just a quick pause. I want you to tell us just real briefly a little bit about your new ministry real quick at CAP Ministries or Capital Ministries. Tell us a little bit about what's going on with that, how that's come about. You retired from the Northwest Baptist Convention and not too far down the road accepted this position with an organization where you were on the board, if I remember right,
Yes,
and they asked you to be the senior Bible teacher. So tell us a little bit about this.
Yeah, it's really quite humbling, actually. It's kind of amazing because I've been on their board. My wife and I started a Bible teaching ministry in Olympia in the state capital of Washington about 11 years ago. It's still ongoing, has a great man leading that. And that was my beginning with Capital Ministries. And the Capital Ministry is about teaching the Word of God to leaders, to elected leaders. At the state level, the local level, and with our national government, and also 80 countries around the world, and that's growing. And that's the fountainhead of that is what happens in Washington, D.C. So most every week, my wife and I fly from Washington State to Washington, D.C. On Tuesday, I teach a Bible study for U.S. senators, Tuesday morning. Wednesday morning for White House cabinet members, and we have several governors that Zoom into that meeting. And then on Thursday morning for U.S. House members. We have a great gathering of all three groups. We essentially meet when they're in session. So if the Senate's in session, the House is in session, we meet. And like, for example, this week, they were, because of the weather, the Senate didn't get there until Tuesday night. The House is not in session this week. So we had a Zoom Bible study, just only Zoom, with the White House cabinet and with governors. We had a really good group and just a great study. And I'm taking them through the book of Galatians is where we are. We're just starting Galatians chapter 3.
Well, it's an exciting ministry, no doubt. And for many, they may not even realize this kind of a ministry exists on Capitol Hill. And it has been going for some time. And they are privileged to have you as a Bible teacher. And I know they'll come to know that more and more as time goes by. But we're appreciative of your influence there, teaching God's word as we're there. Now, let's jump back on our topic again.
Sure.
Our concerns about things that have been put into the court documents and submitted to the court, both in the Northern District of Mississippi, U.S. Fifth Circuit Court, and the Supreme Court of the United States. One of the arguments that the North American Mission Board has said that they legally are a supporting organization to a state convention. Again, this case hasn't been adjudicated, but they're arguing that because they are a supporting organization to the Maryland-Delaware Convention at this point, they would be to any other organization as well, even though that state convention was established before the Southern Baptist Convention was, without any doubt, and way before the North American Mission Board. I don't know, were they before this? Not before the Southern Baptist Convention. I misstated that. Before the North American Mission Board. Before the North American Mission Board.
Yeah, and before the Southern Baptist Convention, actually. Okay, so the Maryland-Delaware Convention is older than the SBC. The other thing is they actually contribute more money. If you look at cooperative program money, Lottie and Annie and all of that, there's more money that goes to the SBC from the Maryland-Delaware Convention that came to the Maryland-Delaware Convention from the SBC. So this idea of being a supporting organization, that's really a technical term that's never been used. It's not, in fact, correct to say that they are a supporting organization of Maryland-Delaware. My understanding, it's not legally correct, and it's never been used before. They've used that term in order to win this case, essentially. And essentially what they're saying is because they had an agreement with Maryland-Delaware that protects them from any lawsuit filed against them from anyone associated with that convention. Now, again, what they say specifically is we could defame a person or we could interfere with the employment of a person and they would have no recourse against us because we are a supporting organization. Which begs the question, if a church receives something from the North American Mission Board or sends something to the North American Mission Board, of course, church plants do if they're funded, but churches perhaps as well. And maybe not just NAMB, it could be other SBC entities. If we are supporting each other and can be looked at in that way, the question is, could there therefore be descending and ascending liability in lawsuits? So that's a concern. If in fact we argue that if you're connected to each other in some financial way, can there then be ascending and descending liability in terms of lawsuit? Southern Baptists have always said, no, you can't do that because we're all autonomous. But NAMB's argument seems to open the door to the idea that maybe we're not all autonomous. Maybe we are connected, because that's what they're arguing, in such a way that we are protected by First Amendment privileges and First Amendment rights, actually.
Well, and a lawyer, a legal team could go back and see these precedents of saying that, their supporting organization, or because there is a some type of cooperative arrangement or agreement, or there has been any kind of funds that have exchanged hands. And the reality is ABC Church, just over the hill and across the veil from where I am, if they give money to the cooperative program, you could go back and say, okay, that money goes to the executive committee, well, through the state convention first, then the executive committee, then it's dispersed to NAMB, IMB, seminaries, et cetera, and there is a connection of money at that point, even if they have not received any dollars or cents at that point. And so there's this connectivity that it seems they're trying to lead the court to believe that we're all connected under this one umbrella. We're one big Southern Baptist church. Therefore, you are infringing upon our rights to have a discussion with an employee, which North American Mission Board, even though there is evidence that has been revealed, again, not adjudicated, but that they applied pressure to the convention to terminate McRaney by saying we're going to withhold over $1 million and whatever that would be, 6, 7, 8 staff members that would be funded through that partnership that they had, even though the convention was giving more to the North American Mission Board than what they were receiving back through their gifts. It's a real concern.
Another way to maybe look at it is we're autonomous. And Southern Baptists have always said, the churches are autonomous from the conventions and from the associations. We're all autonomous. What NAMB has argued is because there was a merging of interests, a merging of dollars even, because of that, it sort of brings our organizations together so that we're really not separate. And we're really not autonomous in the way we understand that. And therefore, we have no legal protection if one harms the other. We have no protection if one harms the other because we've merged together these interests and these dollars. Something also, this is a bit of a nuance, but in the hierarchical denominations like Roman Catholics and others, they have a court system in their denomination to adjudicate disagreements that they have with each other. So they don't necessarily have to go to secular courts. Southern Baptists don't have that. We have no court system. We have no means by which to adjudicate when there's disagreements with each other. Churches can't, we have no forum for that. So that's something to keep in mind as well.
So there's no real need for it, right? I mean, because we're not responsible to the Southern Baptist Convention, the Executive Committee, or North American Mission Board. We're all independent, autonomous, self-governing. Even when a convention or the convention meets with all the messengers when they gather, and they pass a resolution or something else. I saw a guy just the other day saying a resolution was coming out of the Southern Baptist Convention and was being advocated to become policy, in the government. No, I don't think so. But that's a statement of those messengers at that time. But this is putting in the court document that there is this connectivity.
Correct.
To where, if somebody stumbles and breaks a leg because there was a loose railing on the porch outside of a, ABC church over here, they can come back and sue ABC Church, the association they're in, that state convention in that state, and then the Southern Baptist Convention as well, because they're forming this connectivity together, which is the real concern of the kind of language they're using here.
It is, because we have thousands of churches that are financially entangled, you might say, or involved with the SBC.
And Randy, unpack this a little bit, and I want you to come back to that every church plant. But one of NAMB's claims in their arguments, this is one of the legal claims, is that they are protected by an absolute privilege with regard to any statements they may make about, in this particular case, the plaintiff, which was an executive director of a state convention. But in the umbrella, they're saying they're protected from anything they would say among any person, and that's protected by the First Amendment and religious freedom, that they have the right to do that as if they're all a part of the employees of the North American Mission Board. Address that further.
Well, maybe one way to understand that would be if you're a pastor of a church and a church across the town that's maybe another Baptist church, if they interfere with your church in some way, if they spread misinformation about you, if they defame your character, if they try to, if they try to actually infiltrate your membership in some way and to get you fired, for example, you would have legal rights against that church that was doing that to you, because you're two separate churches. You're not the same church. And the First Amendment protects the membership of a church, protects the local body from taking interests of the local body to the secular courts. So, for example, a local church can fire their pastor, and that pastor has no rights in the court system because it's an internal matter. It's a separation of church and state. It's a religious liberty matter. That's different, however, than if the church across town tries to do that to your church. That's essentially what we're talking here. NAMB is a different organization. They're the church across town, whether or not you partner with them in some way. And therefore, as the church across town, they don't have a right to interfere with you or to try to get you fired or to defame your character. They don't have that right. Now, what they have argued is they do have that right. Now, they say in McRaney's case, we didn't do that. But if we did do that, there's nothing you can do about it and nothing he can do about it, because we have that right and that First Amendment protection. But because of these merged interests, essentially. And so the argument is we're all part of this. These agreements make us part of the same organization to the extent that we have legal protection from the courts. And the courts can't even look at whether or not we did someone wrong. They can't even look at it.
Right. Well, and we use the term umbrella. NAMB claims that the SBC is the umbrella Southern Baptist governing body over all of the various groups of churches. That's in the court document again. You just stated that a moment ago, that they put that in there. Let's also look at this. NAMB has claimed that they are the SBC Mission Board. This is how they referred to themselves in the court documents. Again, forming this idea, we're all under this one umbrella. We are the SBC Mission Board. Another one of the concerns and claims that they've made. State conventions are members of the Southern Baptist Convention is another one of the claims. Are state conventions, you were executive director of a state convention and worked at the state convention in Oklahoma. Are they a member of the Southern Baptist Convention?
No. And let me give you an example. I just read in my quiet time, my Bible reading today, of how David used a foreign army to kill Uriah, the Hittite, whose wife was Bathsheba. And so David committed murder by using the sword of another to commit murder. And in essence, it could be said that that is what could be done if you use another organization, an outside organization, to do harm to someone that you're at odds with, you might say. I'm not certain I made myself clear on that, but I like the story. And I like the whole idea of, claiming we didn't do anything, but saying we could do something if we chose, and you would have no recourse against us. And what that essentially sets up with Southern Baptists is whoever has the most money and the most power is going to rule. If we can say about each other whatever we choose, and if we can do to each other whatever we choose, then whomever has the most power and the most influence is going to be in charge.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's essentially, I think, what we're.
No, it's somewhat terrifying.
Yeah.
If you look at it that way. Well, it's one of the reasons why many people are Southern Baptists, because we're all autonomous organizations. We partner together. Every church maybe doesn't choose to be as supportive of the ERLC or of one of the seminaries or of North American Mission Board or whatever. And they may be supportive of all of it. And of course, Southern Baptists are doing great work in lots of places all over the world, but go ahead.
I know where I was going with my David using a foreign army analogy, that actually it was the ERLC's amicus brief that said NAMB is the Baptist Mission Board. And now, if you ask the NAMB president or the NAMB hierarchy, are you the Baptist Mission Board? They would say, oh, no, we're not the, because we know we have an international mission board. The problem is that's what they allowed to be said to the court. So it's one thing to tell Southern Baptists something, but now you're telling the court something different. So you're using the court through misinformation to get something done that you want done, that isn't true. You're not the or the Baptist Mission Board. That Southern Baptists are not a hierarchy with the SBC at the top of the pyramid. You know that, but you allow that to be said to the court in order to win a case or in order to keep a case out of the court and not let it be adjudicated before the court. So it's sort of like David saying, oh, I'm not going to put a knife in Uriah, but I will put him in a position where the foreign army can kill him, which is what they did. And so in a sense, you might say the ERLC was put in the position through their amicus brief, which was known by the North American Mission Board, to do the dirty work, to misstate who Baptists are, a hierarchical denomination and such.
Okay, Randy, let me ask you, you're a longtime Southern Baptist, probably much like me. You were Southern Baptist 9 months before you poked your head into this world. Does that concern you, that these are just out and out falsehoods?
Well, it concerns me greatly, because I think it puts at risk everything that we've built over the last 150 years. And what I mean by that is this case and other things as well have created diminished trust in the SBC. I mean, hugely diminished trust. So if you go back 16, 17 years, we had many thousands more churches involved in our work than we do today. Many, many thousands. We had $100 million more dollars, over $100 million, I think, in 2008 than we had in 2025, given through the cooperative program. $100 million. If you put interest to that, it's probably $200 million. That's how much our purchasing power is diminished in just about 16, 17 years. Baptisms are about 100,000 a year below where we were 15 years ago. Missionaries on the field, on the foreign field, are about over 2,000 less. it's probably 2,300 fewer than we were at our peak, something like that. So I say all that to say, some would say, we don't want to talk about this. We don't want to get directly involved in this. Other Southern Baptist leaders have just chosen not to say anything, not to get involved. What I would say is we are seeing, because of a lack of willingness to be honest about who we are as Southern Baptists, to correct these horrible misstatements that NAMB and the ERLC have made, to force them to correct them in the courts, not just in the media. Not to do such things is creating such lack of trust that we are seeing a huge diminishment of who we are as Southern Baptists. Like I said, over 2,000 fewer missionaries on the foreign field, $100 million less dollars in the cooperative program, 200 million if you count inflation, 100,000 fewer baptisms. I think much of that is the result of diminished trust, which has caused thousands and thousands of churches to just quit, just opt out of this cooperative system that we grew up with and love and believe in. But the argument has been, with all the problems, this is from some SBC leaders, with all of the problems, the cooperative methodology is still the best methodology to reach the world. That may be true. I think it is true. However, if people don't trust the cooperative system, if they don't trust those who are in this cooperative system, they can find other ways to do missions. And we might say, but it's not as good or not as effective. Well, there's other groups out there that are doing missions in different ways, and they're doing evangelism in different ways and sending missionaries and finding other ways to support them. I believe in the cooperative method of supporting missionaries, but I also understand if people don't trust the system, they're not going to support missionaries in that way. And if they still are mission-hearted and mission-minded, they're going to find other ways to send missionaries. That is what is happening right now in Southern Baptist life. Thousands of churches are finding other ways to support missions. And it's because of a lack of trust. And I think a lack of willingness to confront these issues head on and be honest with each other, be transparent and hold each other accountable to do the right thing. If we're not willing to do that, we're going to see a continued diminishment of cooperative program and missionaries on the field, because we've not turned that around now in almost 20 years. We've been going the opposite direction. And if we don't do the things to build back trust, we won't build back this missionary effort that our forefathers handed us.
Randy, as we wrap up, tell us what the average Joe, average Jane, Southern Baptist can do at this juncture. I know you're putting together this amicus brief to be submitted to the Supreme Court with this new appeal. And if they accept the case, then that'll be a part of that record as well. What can we do? What can the average person do?
You can pray, obviously. You can become educated as to what is happening. The amicus has to be submitted by February 9th. The time frame on these is really, really short. So it's with the attorneys right now preparing the amicus brief. And those of us who believe in this are going to pay for it. These things are not, and especially when you're going to the Supreme Court, it's expensive. And so, but if people understand and can talk about it in an intelligent way, especially in their convention meetings, the Southern Baptist Convention meetings, it's education and involvement that's going to make a difference over the long term. And so that's really what we need. I'll probably have, 50, 60 signers of this amicus brief. Some Baptist leaders. In fact, the last one we did, Morris Chapman, who led the executive committee of the SBC for 18 years,
right.
Was president of the SBC for 2 terms. He understood what was at stake, and more so than probably anyone. And he put his name on that last amicus brief. Now he died this last year, and so he won't get to put his name on this one, but other Baptist leaders will. State convention leaders or former state convention leaders, pastors, lay people, because we see what's at stake. Now, if McRaney, if it ever got to court, McRaney would have to, his arguments would have to prevail for him to win against NAMB. That's not what the amicus brief is not saying anything about if McRaney's claims are true or not.
Right.
We all have our opinions about that. But the amicus brief basically says that what NAMB is doing actually diminishes religious liberty, because it puts the religious liberty of every Baptist pastor and church underneath the religious liberty, you might say, or the activities of a large, powerful entity like the North American Mission Board. So we think the arguments, and not just we, Barry Hankins, who's an expert and has testified as a legal expert on church-state issues, he says NAMB's argument diminishes religious liberty. But McRaney's argument and our argument in the amicus, we are arguing for true religious liberty. So religious liberty is at stake in this as well.
Yeah, Randy, just real quick, I know we're wrapping up, but let's pull up that Hankins quote that we had there. Hang on a second. I need to pull this one back off. And now then, there we go. This is the one that he did. Hankins basically says, "It is my opinion as a scholar of church-state relations in the U.S. that NAMB's First Amendment defense in this case, if accepted by the courts, would actually undermine religious liberty rather than safeguard it." He further said in another place in his testimony, if NAMB's interpretation of the First Amendment prevailed, every Baptist entity that cooperates in any way with the SBC would be put at risk. That's how concerning this is from a Baptist historian, a noted Baptist historian, stating it there. Again, people can go and read these court records. Some of them are fairly extensive, but we'll try to put links to those in the description of the video as well. Randy, thank you for joining me tonight and being a part of trying to clarify the concerns that many of us have of how NAMB is misrepresenting the Southern Baptists and who we are and our autonomy, even though they claim they're defending autonomy. It's hard to say that when you look at some of these things that they've put into the court record. A final word from you.
Well, I think you said it well. You can say one thing and do another. We preach about that. And in fact, I think that's what's happening with NAMB's argument to the courts. They're saying one thing at times to Southern Baptists, we're the protectors of religious liberty, things such as that. But it's their actions in the court. It's the argument to the court that's concerning. Because at the end of the day, what the court says, what the Supreme Court says, is the law of the land. And if they say that Baptists are all part of this one big church, we're the Baptist church, and therefore we're kind of like Catholics and our polity, is not what we say our polity is, well, legally in the United States, it'll be whatever the court determines our polity is, essentially.
Yeah, I heard a Texas businessman referring to this. And he said, basically, if this stands in court, it's creating a new kind of Baptist polity because this connectionalism that is being formed by their arguments in the court. Well, we're going to wrap it up with that. Randy, thanks again for joining us and being a part. No question, we're glad that you're joining us and a part of this tonight, as we've tried to do as we continue to look at this case and follow this case. What we'll do is we will try to update folks in the coming days as this moves to the Supreme Court, if it's accepted or not accepted, and what the resolution is. Thank you again for being a part. Stay in touch.
Thank you.